As we heard from Stephen Grudis in the Business and Markets report at 10 to 5, and as we'll hear again from Stephen at around a quarter to 6, and then in the Money Show between 6 and 8, world markets are roiled. The global economy is very uncertain at the moment. What is going to be the impact of the tariff regime introduced by Donald Trump yesterday? What level of negotiations are going to be? Are they going to be successful? Is the American economy going into recession? The stock markets don't like what is happening, and the currency buyers don't like the dollar at the moment. Nobody likes the rand at the moment. The JSE suffering, and there are local and international pressures on the South African economy at the moment. Lack of growth, that's a consistent pressure on the South African economy at the moment. The impact of the DA potentially leaving the GNU, that's something to consider. And the impact of this new global tariffed world. Dr. Kenneth Creamer is an economist at Wits University, joins us now. Kenneth, good afternoon.
Hi, John. How are you?
I am I'm definitely more uncertain than you are. I suspect you are unsure about a lot of things. I'm just blind ignorant about everything. Do you have any kind of crystal ball that's showing any sort of discernible image?
No, unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball. But like you and like many others, I've been watching the world and our country really closely over the last few days. And it's indeed very concerning. Talking about our budget process and where we've got with that, it's always been a very credible part of our governance system. Unfortunately, this year it's become extremely shambolic and disorganized and crisis-ridden. And I think we haven't transitioned well from one dominant party, which had all the power to make the decisions, to one in which parties have to come together, opposing parties, and work jointly on deciding the country's budget. It's quite a serious situation domestically, John.
And internationally, South Africa is one of the countries that has been sanctioned tariffed the most, because Donald Trump muttering darkly again about terrible things happening here in this country. And successful negotiations to reduce at least some of the tariffs, who knows? A lot of the things we export to the US are thankfully exempt from tariffs, that incredibly long list that was published. But the world economy, most economic commentators that I'm reading, Kenneth, are suggesting that global growth prospects must now be downgraded. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, I definitely would agree with that. I don't think that any economist really worth their salt can see how this strategy and series of interventions by Donald Trump can assist the American economy or the global economy. It seems to be an ill-informed set of interventions. I've noticed today that the dollar has been weakening against major currencies. And that being said, the rand has been weakening against the weakening dollar. So we've got a double crisis. It's the homegrown one that we were talking about earlier with regard to the budget, which I think is really costing us quite significantly. If you look at the bond yield, the interest rates that South Africa has to pay now on its borrowing, its public debt, that has been rising. When the GNU came in last year, it was very well received by the markets, and the rand strengthened, and the interest rates, the long-term interest rates fell, and investor confidence rose. But we're seeing that unwinding now in front of our very eyes, as the GNU has begun to fall into disarray and possibly change its configuration. I think what will be important for South Africa is, however it shakes out with regard to the GNU, that it needs to signal very clearly that it is going to continue with the Operation Vulindlela type reforms around electricity modernization, ports modernization, road and rail, and that growth will be on the agenda. We can't really allow this kind of chaotic, shambolic political engagement to destabilize that.
I was just looking for it, but couldn't find it, so I'm not sure whether it was Bloomberg or Reuters, but one of them quoting senior investment banker as, again, telling us that corporate South Africa is sitting on a massive cash pile at the moment, but they're not putting that into new business because, again, it's something which is trite, but business likes certainty, and there's global uncertainty at the moment, and there is sort of ongoing South African uncertainty, which is worse than usual at the moment, given that we don't know what's going to happen with the budget, we don't know what's going to happen with the GNU, and until businesses exist primarily to make money, to make returns. And in an uncertain environment, they're making better returns from keeping their cash in, sort of cash-based or interest-bearing investments than putting it into into a factory or whatever the case may be. So it really is, Kenneth, critically important that we get some sense of stability so that we can begin to grow our economy by more than the just under 1 percentage point or 2 percentage points that are the best that our economic forecasters can manage at the moment.
Bricks and mortar investment is really the challenge that we have to meet if we want to create jobs, and the uncertainty is so deep. Even if you look at that narrow vote yesterday that we had in Parliament, it would seem to signal something that the ratings agencies and the market would be in favour of. It seemed to signal that there is a fiscal framework that has been adopted, and that South Africa will not be borrowing more, because that is a huge risk if we start to borrow more when you already have such high public debt. But when I say it seems to say that, there's ambiguity as to exactly what the parliamentary process has agreed. And this plays into your point of the uncertainty that is rocking the bricks and mortar investment, rocking the markets, because there's an ambiguity as to whether, in fact, how that fiscal framework will be achieved. Will it be achieved through the VAT increase or won't it? Will there be spending cuts or won't there? So there's tremendous uncertainty, and when you have that, the lack of credibility in your budget process, it begins to really cost you. So unfortunately, South Africa couldn't have chosen a worse time to have a homegrown crisis of this nature. This should be a rallying together of South Africans to deal with the inevitable job losses that are going to come because of what the United States is doing, specifically in certain sectors down in the Cape, in the citrus area. There's a lot of worry. In the automotive export area, there's a lot of worry for people in the Eastern Cape and in Pretoria and Durban. We should be rallying around trying to say, well, what are we going to do about this? What new markets can we open? How can we improve our products and engage with other countries that do want to speak to us? There's a lot of countries who are all feeling aggrieved, and they will work with the Europeans, the Chinese, the Brazilians. But instead, we've got ourselves into a bit of a domestic knot here.
Very important message there from Dr. Kenneth Creamer, an economist at Wits University. Thank you, Kenneth.